Welcome back, Vipers, to another episode of This Week with Cheek. Yes, I'm still loving pumpkins, thanks to all my students who carved the Mr. Slopeface. And we have a new member of our family. Haven't yet named him, but pretty sweet. Thanks, EJ, for the flying pig. Now, let's learn how to write an equation given 2 points. But we want to remind you today of something you already know. As you can see up here, I've got my slope and my y-intercept. And then my equation in slope-intercept form. And so if I wanted to write an equation in slope-intercept form, all I would have to do is take my m and my b and plug them into my equation. Just like this. Make that a little bigger. Another example. We have 3/4 as our slope and 2 is our y-intercept. Again, y equals, and instead of m, we'll replace it with the slope that has been given to us. And then for the b, that'll be 2. So it'll be plus 2. You've already been taught this. Now we're going to build on what you already know, and we're going to give you the slope and a point. And what we're going to have to do is solve for our y-intercept. But to help us do that, we have a special guest on today's show. If you know of the greatest showman, you're about to meet our greatest showman, Mr. Lohmann. Come on up.
Welcome, Cheek Nation. So, like Mr. Cheek was saying, we have the slope and a point. So we already know that we could take the, getting used to my board here. We're going to take the slope and we are going to plug that in for my intercept. But what are we missing? We are missing the b. So what we're going to do is we actually have a point that represents my x value. The -5 represents my y value. So what we are going to do is we are going to take the -5, plug it in for my y. The -1 is going to be represented with the x, so we're going to plug that in. And we know when a number and a letter are together, we're going to multiply, right? So 8 times -1 would be -8. Now all we have to do is solve that simple one-step equation to get b. So how do we get rid of the -8? We are going to add it to both sides. So b is going to equal what, Mr. Cheek?
3.
All right. So now we can go ahead and we will plug in my 8 for my slope. And the b was 3. Let's take a look at another one now. Okay. So again, we're going to start off by taking the 2/3, putting that in for the slope. Again, we are missing what? We're missing b. However, we got a little help here. We have the x value, which is 3, and the y value, which is 3. So we will go ahead and plug the 3 in for the y. We will plug the 3 in for the x. And when we're multiplying fractions, I'm going to go ahead and make that 3/1 plus b. how to multiply fractions. 2/3 times 3/1 is going to be 6/3. What is 6/3? 2. And we've got a simple one-step equation. We're going to take the 2, subtract it from both sides. So my b will be what? 1. All right. Now let's fill in the pieces, okay? So again, the slope, which was given to us, 2/3. My b, which we found out from the steps here, is a +1. Finished. Mr. Cheek, why don't you take over the rest here?
That was a great job by our Viper Showman, Mr. Lohmann. Now let's continue to build on what we've learned today in our next example. This time the slope is not given to us. So we need to calculate the slope using our slope formula. So we're going to go ahead and subtract our y values, y2 minus y1, over x2 minus x1. And we get a slope of 3/2. Next, just like in our previous problem, we're going to take our slope and 1 point. You can use either this point or this point. It's your choice. I'm going to go ahead and use 4, 3. We're going to take that information and then plug it into our equation. So instead of y, we're going to use 3. And instead of m, we're going to plug in our slope. And for x, we're going to plug in 4. And just like Mr. Lohmann did, I'm going to place that over 1 so you can see how we multiply fractions. And then we've got plus b. So 3 is going to equal, and then I'm going to multiply my numerator times the numerator. So that gives me a 12. And the denominator times the denominator, which gives me 2. And then, of course, we want to simplify that. And what is 12 divided by 2? 6. Now we have a one-step equation to isolate the variable and to solve for b. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides. Our y-intercept is -3. So to write our equation in slope-intercept form, we'll take our slope that we've already calculated, plug it in for m, and then our y-intercept, -3. So y equals 3/2 x minus 3. You're in luck. We have one last example. This is really an application problem where now we have a graph. And so we're not given the 2 points. We've got to actually locate 2 points on the line. And so I'm going to choose this point here. That is 1, 10. And then another good point to choose would be right here. This is going to be 3, 16. And so now that I have my 2 points, I can calculate my slope by subtracting my y's and then subtracting my x's. It's going to give me 6/2. So my slope is going to be 3. Now I can plug that slope in. I've got m equals 3, and I can choose one of these points. I'll do 1, 10. That'll help us find our y-intercept. So we're going to go over here, okay? And we're going to take our equation here, and we'll plug in 10 for y, plug in 3 for m, and 1 for x. And then solve for b. Subtract 3 from both sides. We get 7 equals b. Our equation in slope-intercept form, y equals 3x plus 7. Hey, thanks for being at the board today with another episode of This Week with Cheek.